Hi everyone. Today I'm meeting with all of you, our elementary staff, to talk about implementing effective instructional strategies. So we're going to be talking about effective and proven strategies, how to implement them into your classroom, assessment and how that can be done, and also some cautions to be aware of. Robert Marzano's text, Classroom Instruction That Works, says that learning can be, has identified 9 instructional strategies that are key to improving student achievement across all content levels. All 9 of them are listed, but we're just going to talk about the first 5 today. And they are identifying similarities and differences, summarizing and note taking, reinforcing effort and providing recognition, homework and practice, and non-linguistic representations. So what is the research behind these strategies and how can we apply it at Hilltop Elementary School? The first one is identifying similarities and differences. When teachers present new content to their students, one way to help students understand the material is to break the material down into similar and dissimilar characteristics. This helps students to analyze them in a simpler way. So depending on what you're teaching, you can compare it to previous units learned, really kind of draw in students' previous knowledge on the topic, give them something to connect so that they have something to compare it to. It says that teachers can lead activities to identify similarities and differences, but research has shown that student-directed activities encourage deeper thinking and a broadening of their understanding. So that second paragraph is just to remind us that while it's great if we as a teacher can stand up in front of our class and say, here's how this is similar to what we learned last unit, it's really important to let the students discover what they're learning on their own and to make those connections. And teachers can do that by just gently guiding them in that way. Applications for identifying similarities and differences. So how can we use this in our classroom? Some strategies that we could do to help students find similarities and differences are Venn diagrams, charts. Many of us have been trained in National Urban Alliance, so the double bubble thinking map. And we know that this is even more beneficial than a Venn diagram since a double bubble doesn't limit students' thinking. Also, we can use vocab and conversation starters that encourage students and lead them to compare, classify, and create metaphors about the content. The second effective instructional strategy we're going to talk about is summarizing and note-taking. So note-taking is a strategy that provides students with the opportunity to analyze the subject and decide on important information. Note-taking should always be done by each individual student, as it gives them the chance to put the content in their own words. And I think this part's really crucial. A lot of times, maybe not in elementary school, but as students get older, they start to share notes. And while it's great that they have the information, they're not really digesting it in the way that they understand best. Research shows that students receive practice substituting, deleting, and deciding what information to keep. Students are learning the structure and flow of the material. So how can we apply summarizing and note-taking into our classrooms? In order to establish effective note takers, we need to guide our students by providing them with a set of rules to teach how to create a summary. We need to ask them questions to clarify and for things that are unclear. And students should be able to predict what will happen next in the text. So other NUA strategies that we've learned are the Cornell note-taking systems, and I included a little picture at the top to remind us of what that looks like. And this is, on the right side, students record as many facts ideas as they can. After class, they reduce or question the information to keywords. Students then cover up the right side of their notes and use the words on the left to help them recall as much as info as they can. Finally, the student reflects on the information, reviews the notes several times, and then at the bottom of the page, they summarize the notes. So I think that last step is really crucial for the Cornell note-taking system, that they're making that summary at the end. Another strategy that comes from the National Urban Alliance is called the W3, and there's a picture of this at the top of this slide as well. You split the paper into 3 different columns, and the first column is what I read, so students take notes on what they read. Then in the middle column, they make comments about kind of what they're thinking about as they're reading, and then they have a chance to turn and reflect with a neighbor and kind of discuss their notes and discuss their learning and add anything their neighbor said. I think this is a really maybe a little bit more simple than the Cornell notes and something you could use in lower elementary as well. Another one is paraphrasing thinking strategies. SQ3R is another strategy that we learned in NUA, and this just helps students practice restating content in their own ways without opinion. To teach this, they read a text aloud, and after reading each sentence, they paraphrase it in their own words and then write it down. They do this for all consecutive paragraphs. Finally, before having students paraphrase independently, ask them to practice this strategy with a partner using a new paragraph. So this one also takes a little bit more prep and is probably a little bit better for the upper grades. I included a quote that just kind of reminds us of the importance of note-taking and effectiveness. And it says, in order to increase the effectiveness of comprehension and memory of the content, the student should use their notes after completing the reading. Students can engage in read, talk, write with their notes. They can complete a thinking map using their notes. They can produce a thinking map and cover it up and see if they can reproduce it independently. And they can review all their notes and try to condense them into one page of the most essential words and phrases that help the students recall key ideas, facts, and concepts. So I think this is just to remind us that taking notes won't really do anything for students if you're not using those notes to help them learn, to help them deepen their learning. The third strategy we're going to talk about is reinforcing effort and providing recognition. And being a lower elementary teacher, and for all grades too, I know how important it is to recognize students' work and give them meaning for doing it. When students are recognized for their effort, it helps reinforce positive attitudes and beliefs about students and their work. Students can learn to change their previous beliefs and shape their thinking to understand that the more effort they put in, the better the outcome. So how can we apply this in our classrooms? We can foster the connection between effort and positive recognition by sharing stories about people who have succeeded by not giving up. Have students keep a personal journal reflecting on their efforts and making links to success. And with this, teachers can comment in the journal and make sure that students know that they are being heard. I also included a tech tip, and this app is called Recap, and there's a little picture of what it looks like. And what students do is they record themselves answering a question prompt. So you could ask students anything as how they felt with the activity today or a specific question. And then at the bottom, you can comment on the student's video and let them know that they are heard. The fourth strategy we're going to talk about is homework and practice. And homework is a tool that provides students with the opportunity to extend their learning outside of the classroom. However, just a caution to be aware of is that research shows that the amount of homework should vary depending on grade level, and it should also be consistent so students know what to expect. They're not getting dumped on one day and the next day nothing. And that also helps with parent follow through. In order to make homework effective, teachers should have a consistent schedule and workload, clearly communicate the purpose of the homework so students don't think it's just busy work but know why they're doing it, give feedback, but vary the way it's delivered. So we know that students when there's new incentives put out, they love them right away and then they start to shy away from them. So just vary the way you're giving it to students, whether it's a sticky note on their desk, a comment on their paper, or responding on Recap. Class Dojo is also a really easy way to communicate with parents on homework and also to give students feedback. The fifth strategy and the last strategy that we'll have time for today is non-linguistic representations. Research shows that knowledge is stored in a student's brain in 2 ways, linguistic and visual, and students should use both of these in the classroom in order to have the best opportunities. So how can we use non-linguistic representations? I know this is really critical at Hilltop since we have so many English learners, but also these representations help all learners. You can incorporate words and symbol and images using symbols, use physical modes and physical movement to represent information, draw pictures, have students do more hands-on activities, kinesthetic activities, and a graffiti wall, which you see in this picture, which is another NUA strategy. The students are responding to a question by drawing a picture on the screen. So how can we gradually implement this? So it's been a lot of information, but how can we slowly implement it? In order to do this effectively, we need to take it slow, take it step at a time. You all know your students, and maybe one of these strategies stood out to you more than others. So my advice would just be to start with that strategy, see how students respond, constantly be monitoring and making sure it's working, and then when you feel like the students have caught on to that strategy, implement another one. So we're all given the article Setting the Record Straight for High Yield Strategies, and this just says, one of the quotes in there, that you should note that we have a limited focus on instructional strategies. There are certainly other aspects of classroom pedagogy that affect student achievement. And so we need to be aware that these strategies are great, but they might not work from one year to the next. So assessments, kind of touched on it before, but it's just important that you're constantly doing that dipstick measure to see if what you're teaching is reaching your students. To assess how feedback is going, teachers could read student journals or use recap, use Class Dojo to see parent involvement and communications. Just important to also be assessing in a variety of ways. For more information on either of these, you can check out Robert Marzano's article that we were given, and also use the National Urban Alliance website, and I linked a list of different strategies you can use that meet a lot of these needs. Thank you.